Everyone. Today I wanted to do a tutorial with you about how to write a scientific conclusion for a lab report. This is specifically geared towards high school students and younger high school students. So this is more of a presentation for your 9th and 10th graders. So one of the things we're going to go over today is that scientific writing is always written in a passive voice. We'll go over some examples of that. Then we're also going to talk about really a conclusion needs to be about 2 paragraphs long. And the first part is really about what is the answer to our experiment and what's some data to help back it up. And we'll look at a rubric that your teacher could give you to grade you on, and really what does this language mean? And then we'll look at the second paragraph and what needs to be included in the second paragraph. And this is really where we talk about what are some mistakes that could have happened, what are some things that I would have liked to control but I couldn't control, and what's another experiment that could be done to further my understanding. And again, we'll look at what a rubric might look like for that. And then we're going to write an example conclusion using a graph as our data source. So that's the plan. Let's go ahead and get started. All right. So in science, we always write with a passive voice. What that means is that we want to try to remove ourselves from our observations. Because in science, we want to make sure that we are being very objective. It's not really about my experience, but it's about what are the numbers and what do I actually observe. Okay, so there's been a style of writing developed that helps to kind of emphasize the role of the scientist in science writing. So this style of writing helps to kind of remove me. I'm not part of this. And so we don't ever use words like me, my, I, we, our when we're writing for science, because we want to make sure that our writing is very objective. Okay, so instead of using some of these words here, we're going to use some of these other phrases. All right, so here's the general format for a first paragraph of a conclusion. You want to write about 1 sentence for each of these bullets. We're going to go ahead and do this now with an example problem. So you'll notice that this graph already has a title for you. That's really handy because usually the title of the data table, the title of the graph, the title of the lab report, and the first sentence in the conclusion all can be almost the exact same thing. So we just need to reword it a little bit. Okay, so you'll see here, I just basically reworded it, the effect of the depth of water on the amount of light penetrated. Basically, to translate that, it's saying, as you go deeper, what happens to the amount of light that is in the water? And I think most of us know from experience that if you go deep down in a pond, you're going to be able to see less because less light is going to penetrate through from above. Okay, and so that's what we're going to say now, but we're just going to try to say it in science fancy language. Okay, so as the depth increased, the amount of light penetrating the water decreased. Okay, so that's just fancy speak for something that you are already familiar with. Now we're going to use some data points to support the statement that we made, because it's very important, very, very important in a conclusion that you use data. In my class, students lose almost half the points for the conclusion if they don't use data. So make sure you use data to support your statements. It's just like, in English class, how you have to support your statements with a quote. In science, we always back up our statements with data. Okay, so we're going to start our sentence with for example. Okay, so far we've written our first 3 sentences. What the experiment's about, what the general pattern was, and some data to back it up. Okay, so now we're going to be a little bit more specific about the pattern. So you may have learned some names like positive trend or negative trend or direct relationship, indirect relationship. If you haven't yet learned those terms, you can look at this video here that will explain those terms. But you basically want to name the pattern that you see. Okay, so this maybe demonstrates a negative relationship between light and depth of water. Now were there any major data points that are way off this pattern? No. So I don't think we need to worry about this bullet point here. So now we need to explain the reason for this relationship. Now I put this in bold because it's often what kids skip and it's worth a lot of points. It really demonstrates to the teacher that you understand why things are happening. So it's really important that you spend quite a bit of time thinking about this, okay, and doing a good job. And it really needs to be 2 or more sentences. All right, so here I have a possible interpretation of the data. I was pretending I was in a physics class. I'm not a physics teacher, so forgive me if my explanation is a little bit off. So I said, as the light waves meet the water surface, the wave's speed is changed because of how close the molecules of water are to each other. This process of changing speed also causes the light to change direction and appear to bend. Scientists call that process refraction. The deeper down data is collected, the more the light waves have had the opportunity to interact with water molecules and have some of their energy pass to the water, causing the light to slow down further. The combination of slowing of the light waves and the light scattering in various directions as it is refracted causes less light to be detected further down in the water column. Okay, so I'm giving multiple explanations or multiple scientific reasons for why there's less light visible the deeper you go in water. Okay, again, depending on the class and what topic you have been studying, you want to try to relate your explanation to the content you've probably been studying in class, because that's what the teacher is going to be looking for. Here we have a rubric that has been developed by all the teachers of science at my school, and some of them are physics and chemistry teachers, where I teach mostly 9th and 10th grade. So the language is sometimes a little hard for my 9th graders to understand, like, what am I supposed to do with this? Okay, so let's just kind of look at some of this here together. Problem is stated clearly and completely. Some teachers do want you to mention what the independent and dependent variable is and what the controlled variables are in the conclusion. That's something you should check with your teacher to see if they want you to just make that simple problem statement that we did, or if they want more detail. Okay. This says analysis of the data is complete and provides a well thought out interpretation, description of trends, and meaning of the data. So that means that, like, describe the trend is what we did. And because we're interpreting the data as far as when we explained why there was less light as you went down, and we explained it in terms of light bending and what's happening to the energy, that's showing we're interpreting the data. Okay. A well thought out answer to the research question is given. We did that again through our analysis of, like, the physics of what's happening, as well as we did make that statement that as we went deeper, we saw less water. Okay. And then conclusion is supported with significant and specific examples from the data. So at least 3 data points should be used. Okay, so that is your first paragraph of your conclusion. Please stay tuned for part 2 of this video, where we will look at your second paragraph, where we're going to look at errors in the experiment and validity and how to write a good paragraph for that. Okay, so stay tuned. Please give a thumbs up if this was helpful, and make some suggestions down in the comments of how I could have explained this a little bit more clearly. Thanks. Bye-bye.